Question: is it possible evil had to exist for God to judge it? So when God creates the new heaven/earth, he is justified to create heaven on earth.
I'm not sure there's logic there without more presuppositions. You're asking for a moral judgment about a purpose, and when you look at, say, courts of law, the hardest part of judging something is, why did the murderer kill somebody? You may have all the evidence he did kill somebody, but you may never find out why. As to why did God need to do this in order to do that? Sometimes God tells us, sometimes he doesn't. We do know that he had planned in advance, because when you look at, say, the theology, Christ was sacrificed before the foundation of the world. Now, since God is outside of time, you've got to look at that from his perspective. He's not hindered by the fact that, well, I've done this now, and we need it for 6,000 years on, right? But at the same time, you can see his anticipatory planning so that we have a total system, immune system, which technically works really well for disease, which didn't exist in the beginning. And Diane might want to comment on the pre-planning of that and why you'd need to do that, and why this is not an automatic plan, but a consequential result of sin coming in and bugs and us not doing what we should. So I'd suggest you need to go back and rethink your question as to separating the purposes of God as to why he needed to do anything, because God doesn't need to do anything at all that would satisfy our logic. That's a really humbling thought to put up with, but so many of us have asked that question, why am I doing this? And sometimes God will actually give an answer. Or why is the Lord enabling my husband to die when I face 30 years now without income? You may not know the answer to that in the beginning. You may never know it before you die. But then when you get to be with him, you'll actually see how clever his plan was to actually make you grow in grace and in faith. So, I had that happen with me because of the study path that God took me on. I always wanted to do science, but God kept sidetracking me after I'd become a Christian into university studies, into academic studies, into educational stuff and all of that. And my thought was, why on earth am I doing this, except the Lord has pushed me in this direction? Now, it's only sort of 20 years on, when I started doing the debates, that I could realize that I could give the same lecture to university professors as I gave to kindergartens, because I'd experienced all these different levels, and you could begin to understand that the academic may be brilliant. He has his PhD in the size of isometric calculations regarding helium atoms or something like that. He's an absolute primary school, elementary kid when it comes to biology. And that was the reason why God taught me that the hard way, and so a path I didn't want to go. So again, I challenge you, always go back and say, does God need to do anything? Well, he doesn't need to justify himself to you or I or anything. He's absolute righteousness. And therefore, you've got Abraham's statement, shall not the God of all the earth do right? It was a great statement when Abraham made it. It was a great finish to the movie, The Bridge Over the River Kwai, as well, by those chaplains. So keep that in mind. Anybody else got any comments?
I just think it sounds like a slightly confused question in terms of definitions as well, like the justified in creating heaven on earth and the like. Yeah. So I'd recommend go back and sort of get a bigger context, because it's a far greater plan than the popular Billy Graham style of, oh, you go to heaven where you die and that's where you end up and that's where you stay kind of thing. We are given a promise of a new heaven and a new earth, which has nothing to do with the current one, because it will have passed away completely, where we will be with Jesus, and we will be in our new body. So get the sort of the full big picture of the future, rather than just trying to ask questions which ultimately can't be answered unless they're answered by God himself. We may, or probably will never know, certainly on this side of life, the answers. So Yeah, there seems to be just, I can't quite pinpoint what it is, but there's some confusion in terminology there as well.